In an urban setting, where the sunset painted the sky with vibrant colors and the streets were filled with hurried pedestrians, a worn-out yellow taxi pulled up in front of a 9-story-old building, its faded facade bearing signs of time. The driver, an elderly man with deep wrinkles, glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the girl dressed in black from head to toe, sitting silently in the back seat. "I'm sorry for your loss, young lady," he murmured, nodding respectfully. "Thank you," Priscilla replied, her voice trembling. She paid the fare and stepped out of the taxi, closing the door with a muffled sound that echoed in her empty soul. She was dressed in funeral elegance, and her eyes lined in black seemed like windows to a devastated world. She had just buried her mother and was now slowly walking towards the building, each step weighing on her like a burden. The automatic doors of the entrance creaked open, and she entered the lobby where the elderly doorman cast a sympathetic glance her way before returning to his duties. Dragging herself with silent resignation, Priscilla began to climb the narrow, dimly lit staircase leading to the third floor. With each flight of stairs, memories of her mother flooded her mind like flashes from a film she could never watch again. Upon reaching the apartment door, she took a bunch of keys from her purse and unlocked the lock. The door creaked open, revealing an interior shrouded in darkness. Hanging on a coat rack by the entrance was her mother's favorite coat, next to a pair of new boots that Fiona had bought just a few days before her death. Priscilla closed her eyes for a moment, holding back a sob. She had held herself together throughout the entire funeral, avoiding showing any vulnerability in front of strangers. Now at home, she let her emotions spill out in an uncontrolled torrent of tears and sobs. The night passed in a disturbed state of wakefulness, where every moment was a blend of past and present. Dreams and nightmares. Upon waking up the next morning, Priscilla lay still for a while, contemplating the emptiness that now surrounded her. She no longer had a father or a mother. They had struggled to give her a better life, but circumstances always seemed to work against them. Her mother, Fiona, had worked in poorly paid temporary jobs to ensure that Priscilla had a proper education, an opportunity she herself never had. But the money was never enough. Leaving the apartment, Priscilla met her friends, each immersed in their own problems and concerns. Elena, her closest friend, immediately noticed her emotional state. "I hope taking an academic sabbatical is the right decision," Elena said, trying to mask the concern in her voice. "To be honest, I'm scared and sad," Priscilla admitted, feeling a new wave of emotion about to burst. Sensing her friend's fragility, Elena quickly changed the topic. "My boyfriend works part-time as a security guard at a restaurant on Avenue Street. They're looking for a waitress. How about giving it a try?" Priscilla looked at Elena, and for a brief moment amid the tide of despair enveloping her, she saw a glimmer of hope and gratitude. She nodded, a small but significant step in the uncertain journey that awaited her. The sun was still rising on the horizon when Priscilla arrived at the upscale restaurant for her interview. The elegant facade with its pristine glass windows and the restaurant's name engraved in golden letters gleamed promisingly. Elena's boyfriend had already made arrangements with the manager for her to be received that morning, even before the restaurant opened its doors to customers. As she crossed the entrance hall, it was as if she had entered another world. The decor was a study in elegance, with carved wooden furniture, crystal chandeliers, and artwork covering the walls. She had never seen anything so opulent except perhaps in movie screens during her rare visits with her late father. Seated in the expensive leather chair, clearly belonging to the owner, was a woman who personified authority and class. Samantha, a tall, slim figure in her 40s, was dressed in a tailored suit that oozed sophistication. Her hairstyle was a work of art, every strand in place, and her eyes emitted a gaze that mixed curiosity and irritation. "So you're Priscilla? Have a seat," Samantha ordered, pointing to the chair in front of her desk. "Tell me about your previous work experiences." Priscilla swallowed hard. "Well, actually, I don't have any restaurant experience. But I'm a quick learner and willing to work hard." Samantha raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. Lack of experience in youth. Those are clear disadvantages, but she paused, looking Priscilla up and down. "It seems you have something more to offer." I'll give you a chance, a trial period. You start tomorrow. First, the other waitresses will show you the procedures. Make no exceptions. This job requires exceptional precision and customer responsibility. If you fail, you'll be let go without hesitation, Samantha warned, each word sharp as a blade. Understood, Priscilla replied, feeling a mixture of relief and nervousness. Late at night, lying in her bed in a silent, gloomy apartment, Priscilla reflected on the twists of life that had brought her to this point. She hadn't even started actively looking for a job, and yet here she was about to begin at a sophisticated restaurant. The promised salary was generous, perhaps enough to start saving for an uncertain future. I hope the staff is understanding and kind, she thought as her eyes grew heavy with fatigue. On the threshold of sleep, her last whispered words in the darkness were to her mother, who could no longer hear her. Mom, please be with me tomorrow. Help me make this work. And with that, she was enveloped by sleep, cradled by a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The next morning, Priscilla arrived at the restaurant, nervous but determined. She quickly integrated into the team, and thanks to her ability to learn quickly, she was tasked with serving her first customer within a few hours. With a professional smile and meticulous attention, she took the order and served the food without any hiccups. Just when she was starting to believe that maybe the whole thing was easier than she had imagined, a luxury car parked in front of the restaurant. The doorman, dressed in his immaculate uniform, rushed to open the vehicle's door. From inside, a tall, middle-aged man elegantly dressed emerged, exuding an aura of someone accustomed to VIP treatment. Samantha, the restaurant owner, promptly left her office to greet him, an eager smile on her face. Ah, I see we have Anders' presence tonight, Christine, one of the veteran waitresses, leaned in to whisper in Priscilla's ear. He's a regular customer, wealthy and single, famous for leaving generous tips. But be careful, dear, he has a thing for young girls, and Samantha wouldn't tolerate any indiscretion. The waitress who occupied your place before was fired for flirting with him. Priscilla's heart raced a bit with the information. Samantha gestured for her, and Priscilla made her way to Anders' table. Good evening, sir. Welcome to our restaurant, she said, placing the menu in front of him with a courteous smile. Anders' gaze fixed on Priscilla's face, and for a moment, he was speechless. She was the living portrait of a lost love, a ghost from his painful past, the woman who had left him a week before their wedding, tearing his heart apart and taking a piece of his soul with her. It was this abandonment that had pushed him into an abyss of bitterness, only to be saved by his ambition to prove his worth. Wealth and success became his silent revenge, a trophy he believed would make his ex-fiancée regret forever. He immersed himself in his law studies, worked tirelessly in multiple jobs, and eventually built a thriving real estate business. He became a business titan, but emotionally, he was a recluse, locked behind the walls of his own distrust and hurt. Looking at Priscilla, an idea crossed his mind. She'll definitely end up in my bed, he thought, believing that such a conquest would be another way to exorcise the demons of his past. Hey, you're new here, aren't you? Anders said, a waft of expensive cologne preceding his words. How about I pick you up after work? We can take a stroll around the city and then have dinner at a cozy place. I guarantee you'll love it. Priscilla felt like a deer caught in the headlights of a car. She didn't have much experience with men, and even less with men like Anders, whose confidence overflowed like champagne from a crystal glass. His proposition hung in the air, loaded with implications that Priscilla knew were problematic. I appreciate the invitation, sir, but we're not allowed to accept personal offers from customers, Priscilla replied, maintaining her polite but firm tone. After work, I have to go straight home. Oh, come on, darling, Anders laughed, his eyes locking onto Priscilla's in an almost predatory manner. The whole city knows me. Hanging out with me would only bring benefits to you. I can even talk to your manager to get you a generous bonus. Is there anything else you'd like, sir? Priscilla asked, skillfully changing the subject. Anders shook his head, a daring smile still on his lips. Not for now. Priscilla took a deep breath and stepped away, returning to the counter with a mix of relief and apprehension. In the days that followed, Anders became a frequent visitor to the restaurant, sometimes accompanied by other suited businessmen, other times alone. When he appeared without company, his offers became increasingly extravagant: a nighttime stroll under the moonlight, a last-minute trip to Bali, a visit to a high-end jewelry store, or even a weekend at his luxurious countryside estate. For Priscilla, Anders' proposals started to become a curious source of entertainment. He seemed to cast these offers like fishing hooks, hoping she would bite one of them. But she stood her ground, listening to each proposal with a polite smile before gently but assertively declining. "I'm not interested, sir," she repeated again and again. And so, in a silent dance of advances and retreats, Anders and Priscilla continued their strange game, a game that, although played subtly, was laden with tension, desire, and the undeniable complexities of power and seduction. Priscilla was already familiar with Anders' story thanks to the whispers among her co-workers. She felt a touch of sympathy for him, which made it easier to ignore his audacious advances and focus solely on her responsibilities. Everything could have continued in this delicate dance of advances and rejections if it weren't for Samantha's intervention. Samantha, the restaurant owner, always closely observed the interactions between Priscilla and Anders. Anders' attention to the young waitress bothered Samantha deeply, fueling a growing resentment against Priscilla. She might as well give in to him at any moment, Samantha thought, watching how Anders behaved more effusively than usual towards a simple waitress. Making her decision, Samantha waited for a few days before taking action. On that fateful day, Priscilla arrived at work as usual, only to be confronted by Samantha, whose glaring look didn't hide her disdain. "Come with me to my office, now," Samantha ordered, her voice dripping with authority. Once she closed the door behind them, Samantha launched her accusation, her face tense and her eyes narrowing. "Priscilla, when I hired you, you made me believe you were in a desperate situation. I gave you a chance even though you had no experience. And how do you repay us? By stealing from us. We conducted an audit, and there's a discrepancy in the cash register. The money was found in your locker. I never imagined you could be so ungrateful." Priscilla, stunned and devastated, felt like the ground had disappeared from beneath her feet. "But I didn't know about any money. I would never steal," she protested. "I won't go to the police," Samantha cut in, "not because I feel sorry for you, but because I don't want the name of this restaurant dragged through the mud. I don't want people to think we employ thieves here. You're fired. Get out of here immediately." Tears welled up in Priscilla's eyes. Samantha's words were like knives cutting through any illusion that she had found a place where she could belong and grow. The accusation, false yet destructive, left Priscilla in a state of abject despair, questioning the justice of the world and the integrity of those she once thought could be worthy of her trust. Devastated and emotionally exhausted, Priscilla locked the door of her apartment behind her and walked to the couch. The day had been a succession of humiliations and betrayals, culminating in an unjust dismissal. With swollen, red eyes, she pulled a worn photo album from a dusty shelf. It was an album her mother had meticulously organized before her passing, filled with memories that Priscilla often revisited to feel close to her. Sitting on the couch, she opened the yellowed pages, scrolling with her eyes to the smiling images of a family that no longer existed. She longed for the serenity and unconditional love that the photos evoked. As she flipped through the album, a sealed envelope fell onto her lap. It had her name written in her mother's flowing handwriting. Priscilla's heart stopped. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal and unfolded the letter. Her mother's words flowed across the paper, filled with love and palpable regret. When Priscilla read the name Anders, her entire body froze. The universe seemed to have collapsed, reduced to this moment of raw and bewildering revelation. Her true father was not just a prominent businessman in town, he was the same man who had spent weeks making unwanted advances on her, the same man she had learned to handle with forced politeness and a cautious smile. Taking her hands from her face, she looked at a photo of her parents, her mother and Ottavio, the man who had raised her as his own daughter. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she murmured, her eyes fixed on the image. The weight of the revelation made her feel nauseous, filled with a complex kind of shame. prospect of telling Anders about her true identity filled her with aversion. What could happen after this discovery was an emotional territory she had neither the energy nor the desire to navigate. So she made her decision. The next day, Priscilla launched into a frantic job search, eager to put both the humiliation at the restaurant and the revelation about Anders behind her. She sent out resumes, attended interviews, and with each rejection, a new piece of her self-esteem was torn away. But she refused to give up. If there was one thing she had learned from her mother and Ottavio, it was that life went on regardless of the twists it took. Leaving another job interview disheartened, Priscilla came to an abrupt halt as her eyes caught sight of a luxurious SUV parked near the building's entrance. She recognized the vehicle immediately, as well as the man who stepped out of it, holding a bouquet of red roses in his hand, Anders. Priscilla, he began with a smile that oscillated between paternal and predatory. I heard about what happened at the restaurant. If you've done something wrong, I can help. Resentment, anguish, and disbelief overflowed within her. Seized by a sudden surge of revolt, she snatched the bouquet from Anders' hand and threw it to the ground, crushing the petals under her shoes. I didn't steal anything. I didn't harm anyone. My mother is gone, and now I find out that my father, my own father, wants to buy me like I'm a commodity, she shouted, tears released like a bursting dam. Without waiting for a response, she ran inside the building, leaving Anders stunned, remaining standing, gazing at the door closing behind her. He waited, gathering his thoughts, letting 10 long minutes pass before following Priscilla. Upon arriving at her door, he hesitantly rang the bell. What do you want? Her voice, still choked with sobs, sounded through the door. Are you Fiona's daughter? The question came out more as a confirmation than a query. Yes, I'm her daughter, Priscilla replied, and after an almost unbearable pause, she opened the door. I found a letter from her. She told me everything. Anders' eyes briefly met hers before turning away. Can we talk without saying a word? Priscilla handed him the letter. He held it as if it were a fragment of a past he could never retrieve. Instantly recognizing the handwriting he had both loved and loathed. It's almost unbearable to know she's gone and I can never make things right between us, Anders said, visibly shaken. Priscilla, please don't reject me. I didn't know who you were, and I made terrible mistakes in approaching you the way I did. But I want to make this right. I promise. Priscilla looked at him, seeing beyond the successful businessman and the man who had made her so uncomfortable. This was her father, imperfect, maybe even broken in some way, but still her father. And she knew that, at the very least, he deserved a chance to be better. Let's have some tea, she finally whispered, wiping away the tears that kept trickling down. It was a small step, but a step towards something new, something that they both hoped could become a kind of redemption for both of them. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.